Divided by Ernesto Cisneros, Chapter 5. With the little ones now under Miss Solomon's care, Efren suddenly remembered his homework, which he'd completely forgotten about until that very minute. Huffing and puffing, he finally reached the middle school. He needed to get to the library and do his homework if he hoped to keep his perfect year-and-a-half streak of not missing a single assignment. But as he pulled out his class agenda, he discovered 3 different tasks waiting for him. He scanned the math worksheet. It was simple enough. He could finish it during the warm-up activity at the start of class. Same with the Venn diagram on amphibians for science. But how could he annotate an entire 3-page article for Mr. Garrett, with only 15 minutes until the first bell? Efren's mouth went sour and his stomach tightened. It wasn't as if Mr. Garrett would understand. No way, not him, not unless Mr. Garrett had a simple policy: no homework extensions, at least not without a parent's note. But the only way to come up with one would be to... Efren shook his head as if trying to throw away the idea, but it held strong. He gathered his belongings and headed to the cafeteria. David liked cutting-knit clothes, so chances were he might not be there. Still, Efren thought it was worth checking. If he were on time for a change, he'd no doubt be at the lunch area, munching on anything cheese-flavored. Efren hurried down the stairway. Finding his best friend turned out to be pretty simple. All he had to do was look right ahead at the brightly dressed kid standing on top of a lunch bench, hollering something about doing away with all homework if he were elected president. David leaped right off the table the second he caught sight of Efren. "Yo, it's working. Everyone I talk to is promising to vote for me. I'm telling you, it's in the bag." Efren leaned in close to examine David's lilac shirt and squinted, pretending to be blinded by the brightness. "What's up with the shirt?" "It's a perfect blend of blue and pink. And," David rolled his eyes, "simple. I want to appeal to all my voters. Blue for the boys, pink for the girls." Efren shrugged. "At least you'll be safe crossing the street. You want to help me pass out some flyers?" Efren caught himself pressing his lips together like a bat often did and felt the pressure building inside. Actually, he couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. "I need a favor." "Anything, bro. Just name it." The classroom door was ajar, yet every student in Mr. Garrett's first period class preferred to wait outside in the cold morning air. Efren poked his head inside. "Mr. Garrett," asked Efren, "may I please speak to you?" Mr. Garrett lowered his magazine. "Mr. Nava, you do realize the bell has not rung yet." As Efren took a deep breath, his eyes glanced over to Mr. Garrett's left hand, to his bare ring finger. There was no wedding ring, just a white tan lying in its place. According to Chisme at school, Mr. Garrett went through a tough divorce, even lost custody of his son and daughter. Probably the reason he was so cranky. "I know, sir," Efren said. "It's about my homework. I didn't get a chance to complete it." Mr. Garrett's right eyebrow bent kind of funny. "You, really? Guess that just leaves Jennifer Huerta for perfect homework award at the end of the year. Unless, of course, you have a note." Efren dug his hand into his pocket and pinched at the corner of his phony note. He thought back to the awards night last school year, remembering how loudly both Ama and Apa had cheered when the principal called his name. Then he imagined the look of disappointment on all their faces if they ever found out what he'd done. He took his hand out of his pocket and clenched it close. "No, sir, I don't have a note." "In that case, go ahead and fill out a parent notification slip and sign the missed homework log." Efren turned away, headed down. "Oh, and make sure you return the slip, or it's an automatic referral to the office." "Office?" The word alone made him uneasy. For the rest of class, Efren did his best to stay focused, as Mr. Garrett droned on about the lack of proper citation in today's media. Well, as best as he could, with David, slipping him little notes with campaign slogan ideas. He watched the clock, minute hand, inch its way through the complete loop. Efren thought about Abba's promise Amma would be returning today. That was all that mattered. No more struggling to untangle Mia's long, wavy hair and figuring out how to braid it perfectly, centered down her back. It also meant not having to chase a naked Max around the apartment trying to put a fresh pair of undies on him. Instead, it meant Efren could go back to hiding out in the bathtub, finishing what could possibly become his favorite book, the whole time knowing that a delicious breakfast awaited him when he stepped out. He took a deep breath, imagining the scent of cinnamon escaping a fresh pot of arroz con leche. The thought made his stomach growl. Efren sprinted home right after school, stopping only when he reached the bottom steps to his apartment. Gasping for breath, he eyed the closed blinds to his living room window. His initial thought was that Amma was not home, but he wasn't ready to accept the defeat. Not just yet. After all, it was completely possible that she was just tired from the difficult trip and decided to take a nap. Efren climbed the stairs, removed the key safety pin onto the inside of his shirt collar. He unlocked both the metal screen and the front door. Once inside, he searched each section of the room. The sheets over the mattress lay unfolded, just as he had left them this morning. The only other place to check was the bathroom, which he immediately headed to. He knocked and pushed the door open. Nothing. He rushed into the kitchen area and searched the countertop for signs of his mother's cooking, perhaps the scent of salsa roasting on her comal griddle. But all he smelled was a stale scent of dread now filling the room. Efren rushed outside, where Doña Chana immediately waved him over. "Oh, hi, I thought you were in LA. I was, but gracias a Dios I came back early." Gracias a Dios, something was definitely wrong. Efren's stomach knotted up as he entered Doña Chana's apartment. The twins sat on the couch watching a cartoon on her cell phone. This time, only Mia ran up to meet him. He boosted her up and gave her a long, sturdy hug. Though Mia couldn't understand the real reason behind it, she didn't mind it at all. Mia planted her chin over his shoulder, a perfect fit. "When is Amma coming home?" she asked. Efren gazed up at Doña Chana, who looked at the verge of tears. She would stay that way for the rest of the evening, barely speaking a word. He pulled Mia back and smiled as big as he could. "Soon, Mia, very soon." That night, after about an hour of reading together, Efren, Mia, and Max finally fell asleep, but soon the sound of work boots entered the room, woke up Efren. He kept himself perfectly still, but his eyes followed as Appa made a beeline for the kitchen phone. No sé, ¿qué puedo hacer?" Appa whispered to some mystery person at the other end. Efren couldn't believe his ears. Hearing Appa admit that he didn't know what to do next terrified him. There were so many things that could have gone wrong, according to the laundromat gossip. He heard bits of crossing over was very dangerous. The smugglers, or coyotes, were not good people. They were criminals who took advantage of desperate families, sometimes just dumping them in the desert. Appa sniffled and pounded on the table hard. "No, ¿le robaron su bolsa con todo su dinero? ¿Todo, incluso el dinero que le pedí prestado?" Wanting to catch every word his father said, Efren stayed perfectly still and even held his breath. But hearing that Amma's purse had been stolen along with the money Appa had borrowed made Efren's entire body shake. "Ahora, ¿cómo consigo más dinero para cruzarla? Where would he find the money to get her home?" The question ripped a hole in Efren's heart, even as more questions filled his mind. Where could Amma be? Was she hurt? Was she scared? Would she ever be coming back? It was all too much for Efren. He opened his eyes and pushed himself up. "Is Amma all right?" Sí, hablaremos más tarde. Appa put down the phone and thumbed the corners of his eyes. "Yes, mijo, she's fine." "But she isn't coming home, is she?" Appa rushed to Efren's side and knelt by the mattress. "Son, look at me. It is just a delay. Nothing more, I swear." Efren squeezed his eyes shut, but no matter how much he tried to stop them, tears managed to seep down his face. "It's okay to cry. I miss her too." That was all the permission Efren needed. He leaped He leapt into his father's arms, tucking his face into his chest. Abba's own sobbing caused his body to bob up and down as if he were hiccuping. Efren couldn't remember ever seeing his father cry like this. Not because Abba was too macho for something like that. Not Abba. If anything, he simply didn't want to add to the family's problems. Like when he got sick last month, and Amma had to force him to stay home from work. Despite his burning temperature, Abba insisted doctors were all quacks and that all they ever do is suggest Tylenol, rest, and plenty of water. It wasn't until Amma raised her voice and scolded him about the poor example he was setting for his children that she finally got him to admit the truth. He didn't want to spend the Christmas money he'd set aside for the family on himself. Besides, he said, pointing to his so-called zipper on his belly, I'm still paying for the visit, remember? Amma didn't laugh. As it turned out, the doctors found Abba had pneumonia something. Amma blamed on long hours he spent working in the cold. Abba was tough as nails. Seeing him cry like this meant things were really bad. And it scared Efren, scared him a lot.